trash like you doesn't belong in first class." The words, sharp and venomous, sliced through the quiet hum of the cabin. Flight attendant Karen Miller, her face a mask of righteous fury, punctuated the insult with a vicious slap across Alani Washington's face. The crack echoed, a sound so sharp and ugly it seemed to suck the air out of the space. Alani's head snapped to the side, her cheek instantly erupting in a fiery sting. A collective gasp rippled through the privileged passengers. Have you ever witnessed someone's life completely detonate in a matter of minutes? Have you ever seen arrogance and prejudice collide with a reality so devastating it shatters a person's entire world? If you want to see karma delivered live and in stunning high definition, I need you to do 3 things for me right now. Smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments if you've ever seen an abuse of power blow up in someone's face. You are about to witness a takedown of legendary proportions. "That's what happens to thieves," Karen sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. She snatched Alani's boarding pass from her hand. With a theatrical flourish, she ripped the document into confetti, the pieces fluttering to the carpeted floor like dead leaves. She threw the remnants at Alani's feet, a gesture of ultimate disdain. "Now get on your knees and pick up your pathetic fake ticket," Karen commanded, her finger jabbing towards the floor. "Then crawl your way back to economy where you belong." The first-class cabin, a sanctuary of leather and champagne, fell into a tomb-like silence. 30 pairs of eyes, belonging to men in tailored suits and women adorned with discreet jewelry, were fixated on the drama. A sea of smartphones rose, their lenses like cold, unblinking eyes, all recording. They saw Alani, standing frozen, dressed in a simple pair of faded jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, and sneakers that had clearly walked more miles on pavement than on airport carpeting. A brutal red handprint was already blooming against the dark skin of her cheek. A man in seat 3A whispered to his companion, just loud enough to be heard, "Finally, it's about time someone handled these scammers with some authority." In precisely 8 minutes, flight attendant Karen Miller would learn a catastrophic lesson. She had just physically assaulted the chief executive officer who owned the entire airline. It was 3:52 p.m. Departure was in 23 minutes. Alani remained standing, a pillar of stillness in the swirling vortex of hostility. The sting on her cheek was a grounding force, a focal point for the cold, calculating fury that was beginning to crystallize within her. She didn't kneel. She didn't even glance at the scattered paper fragments that represented her identity, her right to be in that very spot. The stark red imprint on her skin seemed to be a catalyst, a fuel source for Karen's escalating rage. "Did you go deaf?" Karen's voice climbed into a shrill shriek, a sound that pierced the carefully curated tranquility of the cabin. "I said get on your knees and pick up your garbage." She lunged forward, grabbing Alani's shoulders with both hands, her manicured nails digging into the soft fabric of her shirt. She tried to force her down, to make her physically submit. But Alani stood firm, her body rooted to the spot. Frustrated, Karen shoved her violently, sending her stumbling back against an empty leather seat. "You're only making this worse for yourself," Karen snarled, her face inches from Alani's. She jabbed a finger hard into Alani's chest for emphasis. "Criminals like you always do." The word criminal hung in the air, a toxic, poisonous vapor. "Security!" Karen bellowed, turning her head towards the front of the plane. "We have a violent, non-compliant passenger in first class!" The commotion had now drawn every single eye. In seat 1B, Tiffany Rose, a lifestyle influencer with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and an outfit that cost more than a used car, had her phone expertly positioned. She was live streaming. "Oh my God, you guys," Tiffany whispered into her phone's microphone, her voice a perfect blend of manufactured shock and concern. "You will not believe this. There's literally a scammer in first class trying to steal a seat. This flight attendant, she is an absolute hero, handling it perfectly." Her live stream counter, visible on her screen, was climbing like a rocket, 847 viewers and rising. A torrent of comments flooded the screen. Finally, an attendant with a backbone. "Good. Get her off the plane. These people are always trying to scam the system. Why can't they just follow the rules? I love this flight attendant. Zero tolerance. They need to call the police, like yesterday." Manager Mark Adler arrived, slightly breathless from his dash down the jet bridge. At 52, he carried himself with the weary, aggressive authority of a man who had spent 2 decades in airline management and was thoroughly unimpressed by the human condition. "What's the situation here, Karen?" he asked, his gaze fixed on his employee. He didn't even acknowledge Alani, treating her as if she were a piece of luggage blocking the aisle. "Attempted seat fraud, sir," Karen reported, her voice now filled with a self-important gravitas. She refused to produce any valid identification and became immediately combative and threatening when I attempted to verify her obviously forged ticket. Adler finally deigned to look at Alani. His eyes did a slow, contemptuous scan, taking in every detail of her simple attire. Jeans with a small, frayed tear at the knee that screamed financial hardship, a basic white t-shirt that likely came from a discount store rack, scuffed sneakers that had seen better days years ago. His disgust was palpable. "Ma'am," he said, the word heavy with condescension, "I am going to need to see your boarding pass and a government-issued photo ID. Immediately. No more games." "She already destroyed my boarding pass," Alani said. Her voice was quiet, but steady as a rock, a stark contrast to the chaos enveloping her. Karen let out a harsh, barking laugh, a sound that encouraged several nearby passengers to chuckle in agreement. "Because a blind man could see it was a fake. Look at her, Mark. Just look at her. Does she look like she belongs in a $2,000 first-class seat?" The passengers in the surrounding seats nodded in vigorous agreement. An elderly man, in an expensive 3-piece suit, a gold watch glinting on his wrist, muttered loud enough for the entire cabin to hear, "Disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. In my day, people knew their place." His wife, clutching a designer handbag to her chest, as if protecting it from a pickpocket, whispered, "I just don't feel safe with her on this plane." Tiffany's live stream had exploded. The viewer count shot past 2,400. She expertly angled her camera to capture Alani's face, zooming in on the angry red handprint, presenting it not as evidence of assault, but as proof of justified force. "The poor flight attendant is just trying to do her job, you guys," Tiffany narrated with a synthetic sympathy. "Some people just have absolutely no shame, no respect for the rules." The comments were growing uglier, more vicious. Typical entitled behavior. "Should have called the cops 10 minutes ago. Why are my flights always delayed by people like this?" "Ban her from the airline for life." "Press charges for assaulting the flight attendant." Adler, relishing the moment of authority, pulled out his official radio. "Ground control, this is Flight 815, requesting immediate security response to Gate B12. We have a possible fraud and disorderly conduct situation in the first-class cabin." Slowly, deliberately, Alani reached into her worn leather messenger bag. As she moved, something metallic inside briefly caught the overhead light, the corner of what looked like an official badge or high-level credential. "Sir, if you'll just allow me to show you my—" "Keep your hands where I can see them," Adler barked, his voice echoing with practiced aggression. "Don't you dare reach for anything else without my permission. Within 2 minutes, Security Officer Derek Hayes arrived, his muscular frame filling the narrow aisle. His hand rested casually, yet meaningfully, on the handcuffs clipped to his belt. Behind him, 2 uniformed airport police officers appeared, their presence instantly ratcheting up the tension and drawing even more gawking stares from the economy passengers still boarding. The digital departure board at the front of the cabin blinked ominously. Flight 815, departure 18 minutes. "What's the problem here?" Officer Martinez asked, his tone the universal, no-nonsense voice of law enforcement. He surveyed the tense scene with experienced, cynical eyes. "A clear case of seat fraud and disorderly conduct," Adler explained confidently, puffing out his chest. This individual actively refused to move to her assigned seat and became immediately aggressive and threatening when questioned about her fraudulent documentation. Officer Martinez turned his gaze on Alani, the suspicious, accusatory look cops reserve for suspected criminals. "Ma'am, do you have a valid government ID and a legitimate boarding pass for seat 2A in first class?" "She destroyed my boarding pass," Alani repeated, her voice still a beacon of calm in a sea of hysteria. Karen stepped forward triumphantly, playing to her growing audience of passengers and online viewers. "Because anyone with functioning eyes could see it was a complete fake. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I know a professional scammer when I see one." She turned theatrically, addressing the fascinated onlookers. "This, people, is exactly why your flights get delayed. Entitled individuals who think they can lie and cheat their way into a life of luxury they haven't earned." Several passengers broke into spontaneous applause. Tiffany's viewer count had skyrocketed past 5,000. The comment section had become a toxic waterfall of digital hate. "Arrest her now. These people ruin everything for the rest of us." First-class fraud needs to trend nationwide. Sue her for the cost of the delay. I have a connection to make. The cockpit door swung open, and Captain David Evans emerged, drawn by the unprecedented commotion on his aircraft. At 60, he commanded automatic respect with his distinguished silver hair and a decorated uniform that broadcast decades of service. He took one sweeping look at the chaotic scene and shook his head in disgust. "Ms. Miller is one of our most experienced and trusted flight attendants," he announced, his voice booming with authority. "If Karen says there's a serious problem, then there is a serious problem." Inside Alani's bag, her phone buzzed insistently, vibrating like an angry hornet. The screen lit up through the leather, showing a missed call. "Board of Directors, 15. She deliberately ignored it. Adler's radio crackled. "Mark, this is Patricia Walsh from Regional Management. I'm getting multiple alerts about a significant situation on Flight 815. I need a status report now." Adler keyed his radio, speaking loud enough for the entire cabin to hear his decisive command. "Completely under control, Patricia. Standard fraud attempt. We're removing the individual as per company policy." The radio crackled back instantly. "Absolutely zero tolerance, Mark. Our premium passengers pay for premium service and security. Remove her immediately and place her on the permanent no-fly list." The crowd murmured its approval. This was justice, swift and efficient. Officer Martinez stepped closer to Alani, his hand now moving from his belt toward his handcuffs. "Ma'am, I need you to gather your personal belongings and come with us now. You can try to sort this out at the gate." "Actually," Alani said quietly, her voice imbued with a strange, unnerving confidence that seemed utterly out of place, "I'd like to make one phone call first." Karen snorted with derisive laughter. "You can call whoever you want from the airport police station after you're permanently banned from this airline and all of our partners." Tiffany zoomed her camera in dramatically on Alani's face, capturing every humiliating detail for her rapidly expanding audience. Her viewers were now sharing the explosive stream across every social media platform. First-class fraud was trending in 3 major cities. The departure board updated. Flight 815, departure 15 minutes, final boarding call. "Time's up," Adler declared with an air of finality. "Officers, escort her off this aircraft. We have a schedule to keep." Alani looked slowly around the cabin, at the sea of hostile, satisfied faces. 30 first-class passengers, all reveling in her public humiliation. Hundreds of economy passengers craning their necks, eager to see the troublemaker. And thousands more watching online as Tiffany's live stream went viral. She remained unnaturally, almost frighteningly, calm. "Before you make a decision you can never take back," Alani said, her voice as steady and cold as steel. "I think you all should know exactly who you're removing from this plane." It was 3:57 p.m. Departure was now in 13 minutes. "I don't care if you're the Queen of Sheba," Adler snapped, his patience completely gone. "You are getting off this plane right now." The cabin erupted in a fresh wave of laughter and applause. Someone shouted, "Finally, someone who doesn't fall for the sob stories." Officer Martinez stepped forward, the metallic click of his handcuffs now audible as he unclipped them from his belt. "Ma'am, you need to comply immediately, or you will be arrested for trespassing and disorderly conduct." Alani's phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't just hers. A half-dozen other phones began ringing simultaneously throughout the first-class cabin. A low murmur of interrupted business deals and important calls filled the air. Tiffany's live stream had hit an astonishing 12,000 viewers. The comments were a river of vitriol. "This is taking way too long. Just drag her out. I'm never flying Sovereign Air again if they tolerate this. Should tase her. Stop wasting everyone's time. First-class fraud is trending. Justice served live." Karen, now fully embracing her role as the star of the show, was performing for the cameras. Her voice projected to the very back of the plane. "Ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely apologize for this unfortunate delay. We are dealing with an individual who believes the rules simply do not apply to her." She walked over to where the pieces of Alani's boarding pass lay scattered and, with a dramatic flourish, ground them under her heel, as if extinguishing a cigarette. "This," she announced triumphantly, "is what we do with fraudulent documents." She then bent down, picked up a few of the larger shredded pieces, and threw them at Alani's face. "There's your first-class ticket, Princess." The crowd cheered. Someone began a slow clap that spread through the cabin. Alani calmly brushed the paper fragments from her hair, her expression unchanging. "Karen," she said quietly, "you might want to take a closer look at what you just destroyed." "Oh, I looked plenty," Karen shrieked. "A fake boarding pass doesn't get more real the longer you stare at it." But something in Alani's tone made her glance down at the largest fragment near her foot. Her face went pale as she made out a few partial letters printed in a distinctive font. "Attendant exec." She quickly kicked the piece under a seat before anyone else could see it. Adler's radio crackled again. "Mark, this is Patricia. Corporate headquarters is calling an emergency meeting. Something about a massive social media situation on Flight 815. What is your status?" The live stream viewer count blasted past 15,000. Tiffany was now providing a running commentary like a sports announcer. "Okay, everyone. It looks like the airport police are finally going to make the arrest. It's about time. She's been holding up this entire flight with her lies and her entitlement." More and more passengers were now recording, the scene being captured from a dozen different angles in a social media feeding frenzy. A new player arrived, the boarding gate supervisor, Linda Lane, looking flustered and concerned. "What is going on here? My phone is blowing up with calls from 3 different departments about a situation on this flight." Adler immediately tried to take charge. "Routine fraud removal, Linda. Everything is under control. But Linda Lane looked at the crowd of phones, the live streamer, the police officers, and the palpable chaos. This doesn't look routine, Mark. Captain Evans stepped forward aggressively. Ms. Lane, with all due respect, this is my aircraft. My crew made a decision. We do not negotiate with fraudsters. He pointed a rigid finger directly at Alani. Security, remove her, now. I want this plane in the air on time. The pressure was immense, coming from all sides. Officer Martinez moved in, clearly preparing to make the arrest. Last chance, ma'am. Come willingly, or you'll be carried off in these. He held up the handcuffs. The digital clock showed 11 minutes to departure. The ground crew outside the windows were making their final preparations. The remaining passengers boarding behind the police were creating a bottleneck, a wall of curious onlookers. Tiffany's phone battery was flashing red, but she kept streaming. Oh my God, you guys, this is like watching live justice. I can't believe how entitled some people are. The comments were getting more explicitly racist by the minute. Of course, it's one of them. This is why we can't have nice things. Should be illegal to waste everyone's time like this. Press all the charges. All. Make an example of her. Karen, drunk on her power, now took to the plane's intercom system. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your senior flight attendant, Karen Miller. We apologize for the delay, which is being caused by a passenger attempting to use fraudulent documents to access first-class seating. The situation is being resolved by law enforcement. Her voice echoed through the entire aircraft, reaching all 300-plus passengers. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. A chorus of angry shouts erupted from the economy cabin. Just get her off! We're going to miss our connections! Why don't these people ever follow the rules? Alani's messenger bag was now slightly open, revealing glimpses of official-looking documents and credentials inside. But in the chaos, no one was paying attention to details. They were all consumed by the drama. Ma'am, you're under arrest for trespassing and disorderly conduct, Officer Martinez stated, his decision made. He reached for Alani's arm. At that exact moment, Patricia Walsh's voice crackled over Adler's radio again, but this time her tone was completely different. It was urgent, almost panicked. Mark, I need you to stop everything you are doing. I repeat, stop everything. Do not remove that passenger. Corporate is in an emergency session about this specific flight. Something about... Adler quickly turned down the volume, but several passengers had heard the transmission. What did she say? Someone asked. Did she say, don't remove her? Adler waved a dismissive hand. Radio malfunction. Interference from the tower. But Linda Lane had heard it too, and she stepped closer to him. Mark, maybe we should wait for clarification from... No waiting, Captain Evans interrupted, his voice like granite. My flight, my schedule, my decision. Officers, arrest her now. The crowd was a powder keg. 15,000 people were watching online. Hundreds of passengers on the plane were demanding action. The pressure was unbearable. Alani looked around at the sea of hostile faces, the recording phones, the approaching handcuffs, and the utter chaos that had erupted around her. Then, she did something no one expected. She smiled. It wasn't a defeated smile, or a nervous smile. It was a smile of supreme, chilling confidence. A smile that said she knew something that nobody else did. Officer Martinez, she said calmly, before you arrest me, would you mind if I showed you something from my bag? No! Karen screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. She's trying to distract you. She probably has a weapon. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Passengers recoiled. Ma'am, keep your hands visible, Martinez ordered, his own hand now moving instinctively towards his service weapon. I understand your caution, officer, Alani replied, her voice impossibly serene. But I have a feeling that once you see what's in here, this entire situation is going to look very, very different. The departure countdown hit 9 minutes. Tiffany's live stream audience had surged to 18,000 viewers, all on the edge of their seats, waiting to see how this explosive confrontation would end. And Alani Washington was about to show them something that would change everything. Okay, we have to pause right here. The world is about to turn upside down for every single person on this plane. If you are loving this epic takedown, you need to hit that subscribe button right now because you will not want to miss what happens next. This is justice, served in real time. It was 4:02 p.m. departure in 8 minutes. Alani reached slowly into her messenger bag, every eye in the cabin following her hand. Officer Martinez kept his own hand poised near his weapon, his knuckles white. The air was thick with a tension you could taste. She withdrew a worn, black leather portfolio, the kind that had clearly seen years of use in high-stakes meetings. "Ma'am, no sudden movements," Martinez warned, his voice tight. With deliberate, almost theatrical calm, Alani opened the portfolio. The first item she revealed was a laminated ID badge. It caught the overhead cabin lights, reflecting a holographic seal of authenticity. From several feet away, Linda Lane, the gate supervisor, squinted, trying to read the small print. As the words came into focus, every drop of color drained from her face. "Oh my God," she whispered, a sound barely audible over the hum of the auxiliary power unit. The badge read in bold, official lettering. Alani Washington, Chief Executive Officer. Sovereign Heir. Karen's triumphant sneer froze on her face, cracking like cheap plaster. That's obviously a fake, too," she stammered, her voice suddenly losing all its conviction. "Anyone can make a fake ID on a computer." But Alani was just getting started. She withdrew a second document. It was printed on thick, cream-colored corporate letterhead, bearing the Sovereign Heir logo embossed in a brilliant, impossible-to-counterfeit gold leaf. "This," Alani said with that same terrifying calm, "is my official letter of appointment." She held it up for everyone to see. Signed by the chairman of the board of directors, dated January 15, 2023. Formally appointing Alani Washington as Chief Executive Officer of Sovereign Heir, effective immediately. Mark Adler's radio slipped from his suddenly numb fingers, clattering loudly on the floor. Captain Evans pushed forward, snatching the letter from Alani's hand with a desperate urgency. His experienced pilot's eyes, trained to spot the smallest anomaly on an instrument panel, scanned the official corporate seals, the intricate watermarks, the precise legal jargon that could never be convincingly faked. His weathered face turned a ghastly shade of ash. This can't be real," he stammered, his voice cracking with a rising tide of pure terror. "There's no way!" Tiffany's livestream descended into digital pandemonium. The comment section went absolutely nuclear. "Holy so, is this real? No? Way, no, Foshing, way. The CEO, the actual CEO. They are all so fired. I am screaming. This is the greatest plot twist in human history. Karma is my new religion." Her viewer count exploded past 25,000 as people frantically shared the stream across every conceivable platform. Alani calmly retrieved her personal phone. She dialed a number she knew by heart and put the call on speaker, so every single person in that stunned, silent cabin could hear. The professional ringtone echoed through the aircraft. "Janet Morrison speaking, Executive Office of the CEO, Sovereign Heir." "Hello, Janet. This is Alani calling from the field. I'm currently encountering some operational difficulties on Flight 815 to JFK. Could you please do me a favor and officially confirm my identity for the crew and passengers here? They seem to be having some trouble with my credentials." There was a brief, professional pause on the other end. "Of course, Ms. Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, you are speaking with Alani Washington, the Chief Executive Officer of Sovereign Air, officially appointed by the Board of Directors in January of 2023. She is traveling today for tomorrow's quarterly board meeting at our corporate headquarters in New York. The silence that followed was absolute. It was so profound you could hear the blood pounding in your own ears. Karen's face had transitioned from pale to a sickly, nauseous green. She began backing away from Alani, step by agonizing step, as if Alani had suddenly become radioactive. I didn't know, Ms. Washington, she whimpered. I had no idea. Please, you have to understand. Wait, you slapped the CEO? Officer Martinez stared at Karen in utter horror, his professional composure finally cracking. You physically assaulted the head of the entire company. Adler was now on his hands and knees, frantically fumbling for his radio, his hands shaking so violently he could barely grip it. Alani withdrew yet another document from her portfolio. This one was thicker, bound with multiple legal seals and covered in executive signatures. This is my personal stock ownership certificate, she explained, her voice as even as a frozen lake. It officially documents that I personally own 12% of Sovereign Air. That makes me the second largest individual shareholder in the company, behind only the founding family's trust. She paused, letting the staggering weight of that information crush them. In other words, I don't just work for this airline. I own a significant controlling piece of this airline. Captain Evans was now reading the appointment letter over and over, as if staring at it long enough would magically change the words. But the corporate seals were real. The signatures were original. The legal language was ironclad. Ms. Washington, he began, his voice trembling with a terror he'd never felt, not even in the worst storms over the Atlantic. We had no idea. Of course, you had no idea, Alani replied, her voice now laced with ice. Because not a single one of you bothered to ask a question or verify a single piece of information. You saw faded jeans and old sneakers, and you immediately assumed I was a criminal trying to scam you. Tiffany's live stream had become a global phenomenon. The viewer count blasted past 35,000. Durker's CEO reveal was now trending nationally, completely eclipsing Schobasser first-class fraud. Comments poured in from around the world. This is the greatest revenge story ever told. Karma is real, and she is beautiful. Artisinosum. That flight attendant is done. I'm literally crying tears of joy. This is so perfect. Get them, Alani. Destroy them all. This is better than any movie I have ever seen. But Alani wasn't finished. She reached into her portfolio one last time and withdrew a thick manila folder marked in red. Confidential. Board of Directors eyes only. Discrimination investigation. There's something else everyone in this cabin needs to know, Alani said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. She opened the folder, revealing dozens of official documents, color photographs, detailed incident reports, and sworn legal affidavits. This folder contains the complete documentation of 47 separate discrimination complaints filed against this specific flight crew over the past 18 months. A collective gasp of shock and horror swept through the passengers. 47 documented incidents, Alani continued, of passengers being mistreated, harassed, and discriminated against based on their race, their religion, their gender, their sexual orientation, or simply their economic appearance. All incidents involving the exact same flight attendant, the exact same manager, and the exact same captain standing before you now. She held up a color photograph that made Karen stumble backward as if she'd been physically struck. Here is a photo of Karen Miller deliberately refusing to serve a meal to a Muslim passenger during Ramadan, claiming it was against company policy. Here is documented evidence of Mark Adler removing an entire Hispanic family from first class because their children were allegedly too loud, despite multiple white families with louder children being allowed to remain. "And here," she said, holding up a transcript, "is recorded testimony of Captain Evans making sexually inappropriate comments about the clothing and appearance of female passengers." Adler was now desperately, frantically trying to reach Patricia Walsh. Patricia, please respond. We have a code red, a catastrophic situation. The passenger, she's, oh dear God in heaven." Alani's personal phone rang with an official, multi-line tone. She answered it on speaker for maximum impact. "Alani, this is James Richardson, chairman of the board. I just received an urgent alert about a serious incident involving you on one of our aircraft. Are you safe? Are you unharmed?" The chairman of the board. The single most powerful person in the entire company. "I'm physically fine, James," Alani replied. "But we have an urgent need to discuss some extremely serious violations of federal policy that are happening in real time on Flight 815, all being broadcast live to tens of thousands of witnesses. I'm watching the live stream right now, Alani, along with half the country and several other board members. The entire board is convening for an emergency session in 1 hour. I am personally and professionally devastated that this happened to you." Karen had started to cry. Not tears of remorse, but tears of pure, unadulterated terror as the full, crushing reality of her situation came into focus. Her career wasn't just over. It was annihilated. "Please, I'm begging you," she sobbed desperately. "Ms. Washington, I honestly didn't know. I was just trying to do my job. I have a family, a mortgage, medical bills." "Your job," Alani replied, her words precise and devastating, "is to treat every single passenger with dignity and respect, not just the ones who look like they can afford it." Adler's radio finally connected. Mark, whatever you're doing, stop. That passenger is Alani Washington. She's our CEO. The entire board is watching you on a live stream. You have just created the single biggest public relations disaster in the history of this industry." It was far, far too late. Officer Martinez carefully clipped his handcuffs back onto his belt and took a respectful step away from Alani. "Ms. Washington, I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. This situation was clearly misrepresented to us." "No, officer," Alani said, her authority now absolute and unwavering. "This was not a misunderstanding. This was systematic, institutional discrimination based entirely on racial profiling and classist prejudice." She turned deliberately to face Tiffany's live streaming camera, speaking now to her global audience. "My name is Alani Washington. I am the CEO of Sovereign Air, and for the past year, I have been conducting unannounced passenger experience audits by flying anonymously on our own flights, specifically to identify problems exactly like this one." The live stream audience erupted, 40,000 viewers and climbing. "Today," Alani continued, her eyes burning with intensity, "I discovered that some of our employees believe it is acceptable to treat our customers like criminals, based solely on the color of their skin and the clothes they wear. That discrimination and that behavior ends today. It ends right now." Captain Evans was frantically scrolling through corporate policy manuals on his phone, desperately trying to calculate the magnitude of the trouble he was in. The answer was simple: career ending. Karen had collapsed into an empty seat, her body racked with uncontrollable sobs as she mourned the life she had just destroyed. Adler kept repeating, like a broken mantra, "This can't be happening. This just can't be happening." But Alani Washington had one final devastating revelation. She pulled out her phone and displayed the screen directly to Tiffany's camera for the entire world to see. "I have also been continuously recording high-definition audio of this entire interaction from the moment I stepped on this plane. Every discriminatory slur, every prejudiced assumption, every single violation of federal civil rights law, all of it documented with perfect, legally admissible clarity. The recording app on her screen clearly showed 37 minutes of uninterrupted audio evidence. Tiffany's livestream hit 50,000 viewers as people around the world watched the most spectacular reversal of fortune in modern history unfold in real time. And Alani Washington was just getting started. It was 4:07 p.m. Departure was now officially delayed. Alani stood calmly at the epicenter of the chaos she had unleashed, a queen surveying the ruins of her enemies' careers. Her phone was a constant vibration of incoming calls, corporate headquarters, the board of directors, the legal department. She ignored them all. "Since we're all here," Alani said, her voice cutting through the tension with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to absolute command, "let's discuss some specific numbers." She opened her portfolio to a section marked Financial Impact Analysis. Sovereign Air generated $48.9 billion in revenue last year. Our profit margins are razor thin. Every lawsuit, every public relations disaster directly impacts shareholder value. Adler was still on the floor, fumbling with his radio, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool cabin air. Alani continued with the cold precision of a surgeon. Discrimination lawsuits in this industry cost an average of $2.3 million per incident. That's before we even talk about punitive damages and regulatory fines. She paused, letting the number hang in the air like a guillotine. Tiffany's livestream audience hit 55,000. Social media incidents of this magnitude, she went on, typically reduce a company's stock value by an average of 4.2% within the first 24 hours. Based on our current market capitalization, that represents a loss of approximately $890 million. Captain Evans' face went gray as he watched his pension, his retirement, his entire life's work evaporate in real time. Alani withdrew another document, this one bearing the official seals of the Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration. Under Federal Aviation Regulation Part 308(2), the Air Carrier Access Act, and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, what occurred here today constitutes multiple federal violations, each carrying potential criminal charges. Karen looked up from her sobbing, her eyes wide with a fresh wave of terror. Criminal charges? Physical assault of a passenger. Alani ticked off the list. Willful destruction of a valid travel document, discrimination based on race and perceived economic status, filing a false report with law enforcement. Each violation carries a potential sentence of up to 2 years in federal prison. Officer Martinez shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Washington, if you wish to press charges..." "We'll get to that," Alani said. "First, I want everyone to understand the cost of systematic prejudice." She produced her final, most damning document. Confidential discrimination. Audit, Sovereign Air Flight Operations, 18-month analysis. This report documents not just the 47 incidents involving this crew, but patterns of discrimination across our entire domestic network. Alani opened the report to a page filled with devastating charts and statistics. Adler's radio finally slipped from his nerveless fingers again. Our internal investigation found that passengers of color are 340% more likely to be questioned about the validity of their tickets. They are 280% more likely to be asked for secondary forms of identification, and they are 450% more likely to be removed from a flight for disruptive behavior, despite identical conduct from white passengers being tolerated or ignored. The numbers landed like body blows. The cabin was silent, stunned. Tiffany's livestream comments exploded with pure outrage. "Those stats are horrifying. This is systemic racism exposed live on camera. How is this legal in 2025? Sue them into the ground. This is why I'd rather drive." Alani's phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID, then smiled coldly. James Richardson, again. She answered on speaker. Maya, the entire board is in an emergency session. We are prepared to offer whatever resolution you deem appropriate. The company's reputation is at stake. James, Alani interrupted. I'm going to give everyone in this cabin a choice, right now, in front of 55,000 witnesses. The cabin fell dead silent, save for Karen's quiet, hitching sobs. Mr. Adler, Ms. Miller, Captain Evans, Alani said, addressing them directly. You have exactly 2 options. I will explain them both clearly, and you will make your decision immediately. Adler opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Option 1, Alani began. Immediate suspension without pay, pending a full federal investigation. 120 hours of mandatory sensitivity and bias education training. A public, written apology to be published in every major newspaper and on all company social media platforms. A permanent notation in your personnel files, and a probationary employment status for a minimum of 2 years. The 3 crew members looked at each other, their faces masks of horror. Option 2, Alani continued, her voice hardening. Immediate termination for cause. A permanent ban from employment in the entire airline industry. You will be held personally and legally liable for all corporate damages, including stock losses and legal fees. And I will ensure federal criminal charges for civil rights violations are filed against each of you personally. She checked her watch. You have 30 seconds. Patricia Walsh's voice finally screamed through Adler's abandoned radio. Mark, corporate legal is on line 1. The stock price is plummeting in after-hours trading. CNN is calling for a statement. The DOT is opening an investigation. What is happening? Adler scrambled to grab the radio. Patricia, the passenger. She's the CEO. She's Alani Washington. She's the actual CEO of the whole airline. A burst of static, then, oh my God, oh my dear God. Mark, do whatever she says. Give her whatever she wants. The board is in total crisis mode. Alani's phone screen was a cascade of breaking news alerts. Sovereign Air CEO assaulted by flight attendant in shocking discrimination incident. Airline stock plummets as CEO discrimination video goes viral. Transportation Department opens investigation into Sovereign Air. The livestream audience had exploded past 75,000. Sovereign discrimination was trending globally. Time's up, Alani announced. I need your decisions. Karen spoke first, her voice a broken whisper. Option 1, please. I choose option 1. I have children. Captain Evans nodded frantically. Option 1, absolutely. Option 1. Adler looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route that no longer existed. Option 1, he croaked. Excellent choices, Alani said coldly. Those decisions are now a matter of public record, witnessed by 75,000 people, and recorded for all legal purposes. She turned back to the live stream camera. But this isn't about just 3 employees. This is about changing an entire industry. Her phone rang again. This time she showed the caller ID to the camera. It read, Secretary of Transportation, United States Government. She answered. Ms. Washington, this is Secretary Johnson. The Department of Transportation is prepared to launch a comprehensive, industry-wide investigation into discriminatory practices across all major U.S. airlines. We would like your full cooperation. You have it, Mr. Secretary, Alani said, but I'm announcing some immediate changes that will not wait for a federal investigation. She looked directly into Tiffany's camera, her eyes blazing. Effective immediately, Sovereign Air will implement the following mandatory reforms. First, every single crew member, from pilots to gate agents, will complete 40 hours of unconscious bias and de-escalation training within the next 60 days. Failure to do so will result in immediate termination. Second, we are launching a new Passenger Bill of Rights mobile app, allowing for the real-time reporting of discrimination, with every report automatically triggering a corporate review. Third, any and all discrimination incidents will now be investigated by our new Office of Passenger Equity, which will be headed by a team of independent civil rights attorneys. Fourth, we are establishing a $50 million annual fund for diversity initiatives and discrimination prevention programs. And fifth, from this day forward, executive bonuses for all management will be directly tied to a measurable reduction in discrimination incidents and an increase in passenger satisfaction scores among minority travelers. The live stream comments were a virtual standing ovation. Yes, systemic change. This is how you use power for good. Every airline in the world needs to do this now. Queen behavior. Adler's radio crackled one last time. Patricia Walsh's voice was barely a whisper. Mark, the board wants me to ask, is there anything else? Anything at all we can do? The stock is down 6% and still falling. Alani looked around the cabin, at the crew who had humiliated her, at the passengers who had cheered for her abasement, and at the cameras that had captured it all. Actually, Patricia, she said, there is one more thing. The cabin held its breath. I want every single person on this plane who witnessed what happened and said nothing, who cheered when I was being assaulted, who assumed my guilt because of how I was dressed. I want them to remember this moment for the rest of their lives. Because the next time they see someone being treated unfairly, they will have a choice to make. Will they be part of the problem, or will they be part of the solution? Alani closed her portfolio and returned it to her messenger bag. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to catch. We're already late. 3 months later, Alani sat in her corner office overlooking the Dallas-Fort Worth runway. Framed articles hung on the wall behind her. The slap heard round the world, How One CEO Changed Aviation Forever, from the New York Times. The Henderson Effect, Airlines Embrace Radical Reform, from the Wall Street Journal. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from a number she didn't have saved, but she knew who it was. Ms. Washington, I just finished leading my 40th bias training session for new hires in Detroit. Thank you for giving me a chance to grow instead of just throwing me away. Karen. Alani smiled. Redemption was a long road, but it was possible for those who chose to walk it. She flew regularly now, always in simple jeans and a t-shirt, always observing. On a recent flight to Chicago, she watched a young black man in a hoodie approach the first-class cabin. The flight attendant, a woman Alani had never met, greeted him with a warm, genuine smile. Welcome aboard, sir. Can I help you with your carry-on? No suspicion. No demand for extra ID. No assumptions. Just respect. Progress. The story you heard today is a powerful reminder that our actions and our inactions have consequences. If you believe in accountability and the power of one person to spark incredible change, share this video, subscribe to our channel for more true stories that matter, and let us know in the comments. What is one small thing you can do this week to stand up against prejudice in your own life? Because real change doesn't start in a boardroom. It starts with each and every one of us choosing to see better, do better, and be better. Thank you for watching.